As we reflect and celebrate Black History Month, we want to explore a sensitive debate in recent history in our country. The word black has been used to describe people of sub-Saharan African ancestry. But with immigration and interracial relationships, some are now debating what is black and does the label even matter? Fox 5's Deidra Dukes explains this discussion often comes up during another hot-button issue.
It's a complex question being debated in certain circles amid the ongoing fight for reparations for African Americans. What is black?
In some instances, a person can't prove it. In other instances, like during the antebellum years, one had to be 1/4 black. One had to have at least one black grandparent, right, in order to quote-unquote qualify as being black.
The U.S. Census Bureau classifies someone as black or African American as having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa.
There is no America without slave labor. Slave labor was absolutely the backbone of the birth of this republic. From buildings to crops to agriculture, everything that made America prosper happened by the hands of enslaved individuals. And because of that, America owes black folks in this country. I absolutely believe that.
Dr. Daniel Black is a professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University.
So, of course, in the last several years, people have been talking about reparations for slavery, for enslavement, which I think is a legitimate conversation, of course, to say the least. Of course, the problem is that it's going to get real thick because who exactly are the descendants? Which ones do we count, etc.? And so it gets very, very, very complicated. But I do think the question of reparations is a legitimate question because the question of balance and equity in a society is always a legitimate question.
Centuries after Africans were first enslaved in the U.S., the long-held definition of who is black is evolving as the community becomes more diverse.
I don't know if I would be even considered black enough because I'm a first-generation Congolese American. So my parents are from Congo, so do I qualify as black or do I qualify as African?
I am a person that embraces the diaspora, so I don't exclude the Caribbean and African nations.
We sat down with college students at Clark Atlanta and Georgia State University for their perspective.
I think reparations are due, but I'm interested to see what its effect would be long-term on things like the economy, things like black social mobility, black wealth, and things of that nature.
Most, like Malakia Graves, believe this should be a global discussion.
And in terms of who should receive it, a lot of times we forget that the enslavement happened not just in North America and the United States, but in the Caribbean and all those places. So even we have all of those people here, and a lot of us just want to do the ADOS, the American Descendants of Slavery. But if we get Britain in on this and all of the other colonizing countries, then everyone who was a part of the process should be restored financially.
But there are differing opinions on how those funds should be dispersed.
I do firmly believe that if we were to get reparations, it should be given on an individual basis. I'm not too much of a fan of just dictating how people spend their money, and I think it's something that should be given freely, somewhat kind of like with the stimulus for the coronavirus. There were not really any stipulations on where the money was spent. It was left up to the individual. However, I do agree that Black people as a whole do need more financial learning and kind of preparation with what to do with these sums of money, however much it may be, in order to invest that into whatever areas they seem fit.
Others believe the money should go to fund institutions like HBCUs, Black organizations, and programs that work to address racial inequities.
So I think to some extent, reparation has to come in the form of policy changes as well. How much do you allow Black people to be that, to exist in and of themselves and be comfortable to do so too as well?
While there are differing opinions on how the money might best be spent, Dr. Black believes the question of who's Black really isn't a difficult one.
So the question of who's black at this point, all I ever tell people is, I think black people are those who claim it. If you claim it, right, then I think one absolutely is included in blackness. If you understand that blackness is a part of your cultural inheritance, that blackness is part of your reality, then I think you get to be black. And I say get to be black because quite frankly, a person can choose not to be. And even if one looks black but doesn't want to be, for me, then please don't be.
Deidra Dukes, Fox 5 News.